Tell me about coming into World War II and then you seeing it as just a citizen and not the military.
Mm-hmm. Well, of course, I was a very young teenager at that time, but December 7th, 1941 changed the history of the United States forever. And of course, Japan had pretty much controlled the Pacific Rim, Korea, Manchuria, the coastal China, and of course the Malaysian Peninsula, Dust East Indies, and some of the Solomon Islands. And they pretty well had their way. So we knew that they had to be stopped somewhere. And who was going to do it? Not the Dutch, not the British, not the French.
They were preoccupied.
Yeah. So America had to do something to stop the encroachment of the Japanese on that Pacific arena. Am I talking too fast?
No, you're great. I'm just making sure everything's lined up just right. Okay, yeah, so you're good. So go ahead.
Okay.
Yeah.
So Admiral Ernest King, a very feisty Admiral of the Navy, said we have to get going on this, and he ordered the 1st Marine Division to Wellington, New Zealand. Well, they weren't quite ready. They had sent their 7th Marine Regiment to Samoa to protect that, and they went there unprepared, but they felt they would have some time there to continue training. Well, it didn't happen because Admiral King was ready for them to go into the Solomon Islands right away. Well, as it was, it turned out that they had to combat load their ship because it was commercially loaded, and the labor unions wouldn't help because it was raining. They had a lot of problems. However, on August 7th, 1942, they hit Red Beach on Guadalcanal, and also Blue Beach on the island of Tulagi. And they had no resistance on Guadalcanal. The Japanese had utilized Korean laborers to build an airfield, and that's why they were taking over that, planning to take over that island.
I wanted you to know how I felt about the whole thing.
So, anyhow, the thing is, on Tulagi, they had met resistance. And under Lieutenant Colonel Mike Edson, they did finally clean out the caves, but took a lot of casualties, and they declared the island secure after a couple of days. However, on Guadalcanal, they had it pretty much their own way with the Korean laborers, which they called termites, running into the jungle. And the Marines, 1st Marine Division, found a lot of loot there. And it was good because Admiral Fletcher had left early and left them without any possible air cover. So Admiral Turner had to send his ships also south of Guadalcanal because of Admiral Fletcher leaving early. And you might know all this, but
I'm sure I've read it. Yeah. I may not have it retained like you do, but I know the basics. I knew that Guadalcanal was the first big military U.S. operation in 1942 for the Americans. What was life like back at the time? Like you said, you were a teenager back home.
Yes.
What was the life like at the time, as a teenager, especially as you're nearing 18 years old, which is the first year of military service? Is there a lot of anxiousness? Obviously, the draft has come into play. What's the feeling back home while all these operations, both in Europe and in the Pacific, are going on?
Mm-hmm. There was a tremendous upsurge of anger and patriotism, and young men just lined up all over America to join the military service to get back at those Japs who had bombed our Pacific Fleet at Pearl Harbor. The desire to serve was very strong. I was too young to go in, but I did want to help, and I went to take training at what they call the NYA, National Youth Administration. Ended up learning electric arc welding and welded Liberty ships, which are pretty big ships, up in Savannah, Georgia.
How old were you at the time? Do you remember? Was it about 15, 16?
15, yeah, 16.
So basically before the war effort, or before you were actually in military combat, you were preparing the devices for the military.
Yes.
Okay.
I was working on these Liberty ships, doing the electric arc welding down in the inner bottom with lights and blowers. And we were young teenagers that did that, but we had to be very flexible and kind of crazy to go down in there.
Right.
But we did. But when I turned 18, I went to the Marine Corps recruiting office in Savannah, Georgia, and was sworn in as a Marine, and was sent to Parris Island, South Carolina, for boot camp training. Well, it was unusual, but they wouldn't let us in. They said, we're under quarantine and you can't come in. There was a communicable disease in Parris Island. So they said, your orders we're going to read, you're going to get on a train and go to San Diego Recruit Depot in San Diego, California. Well, which we did. There was about 10 of us. And the thing is, we took our boot training there, 9 weeks. We graduated, and then when we finished, we were told we were not Marines. And I said, what do you mean? And they said, you're a Hollywood Marine. And we've never been able to live that down because Parris Island Marines won't let you forget that. So even to this day, they remind me, no, I'm not a Marine. So, but that was all done in fun.
What was the quarantine for now?
It was I don't know what disease it was. It was a communicable disease.
So it was based on where you were located or what job or why did they suspect that you might have it?
Oh, they didn't. It was closed to, no one could go in or out. No one. So that was their protection relative to the disease, whatever it was. But back those days, measles was a problem, you know. And
before vaccinations.
Yeah, so, you know, I don't know what it was, but they said, no, you can't come in.
So there's a certain time frame of Marines during World War II where they didn't train at Parris Island, and you were in that time frame.
Yes, because of this quarantine. Otherwise, I would have been a Parris Island Marine. However, most every young man, there was a recruit west of the Mississippi, went to San Diego. East of the Mississippi, they went to Parris Island. So it was divided geographically. It wasn't, you know, your choice or anything like that. They told you where to go.
Is that where you grew up, Savannah, and born and raised?
Oh, no. I born and raised in Florida.
Oh, were you? Okay.
I wasn't born, I was raised. I was born up north, but I was raised in Florida, Bradenton, Fort Myers, Miami.
So did you move up to Savannah specifically to work on the ships?
Yeah. I got this job at Southeastern Shipbuilding Corporation in Savannah, Georgia, where they were building ships, and they needed electric arc welders. And I was a capable arc welder, and served there until I reached the age of 18, and then I volunteered for the Marines, and went on and graduated, I said, not as a Marine, but as a Hollywood Marine.
Hollywood Marine.
And then I served for a while in a guard company on North Island, which is in San Diego Harbor. And we went there from there to Camp Pendleton, which is about 30 miles outside of San Diego. And that was a big Marine base, which is still there. And it was called, really, it was a Santa Margarita Ranch. which they had turned over to the Marine Corps for training. And I took my infantry training. I was a rifleman, and from there we went aboard ship, and my regiment, which was the 26th Marines, was ordered to the island of Guam as floating reserve. And we went aboard ship, and we did anchor off Guam, and then they said the campaign went very well and they didn't need us. So they sent us back to the island of Hawaii.
What? When was the Guam campaign? Was this in 43 or 44?
44.
44.
Yeah. And so we trained further in Hawaii between two volcanoes, Mauna Kea and Mauna Loa, on the big island, Hawaii. And finally we received word to board ship and headed for Island X. Well, we had no idea what they meant. Well, you know what I mean. But we found that life aboard ship was not exactly a cruise ship life. It was pretty, I guess, rough in terms of being stacked 5 high on a piece of canvas around some pipe. Dean hearing, now hear this, now hear this, clean and sweep down fore and aft. It means we went to work and cleaned up long chow lines. We stopped at a few other islands, Eniwetok and then Saipan, and then we headed for the island of Iwo Jima. And on February 19th, 1945, we were anchored off the island and getting ready to go aboard a landing craft, Higgins boat. And it was a little bit of a job clambering over the rail and going down those cargo nets with a rifle and all your equipment, canteens and pack and everything else, ammo, 2 bandoliers, one here, one full of 30 caliber cartridge bullets and cartridge belt. Somehow we made it. Not, I'm heard not everyone made it, most guys did, and dropped into the Higgins boat, and we went from there, about 36 of us, went to what they called LD, line of departure, and once we got the signal, we headed into the island of Iwo Jima. But aboard the Higgins boat, I saw guys that I just felt they were searching inside themselves, looking for something that would give them some strength to go through the combat that they were going to be facing very shortly.
Did some of those guys not make it out of there? I know that Iwo Jima obviously was very, high casualty.
Yes. Well, you mean, did they make it out of the boat, or?
Oh, sorry. Off the island once the battle was over.
Oh, most of those guys didn't make it. They were wounded or killed. KIA. I was lucky. I was wounded, and I survived.
Were you shot?
No, I was hit with shrapnel in the belly, and it tore my belt buckle into pieces and went inside me, along with shrapnel in my right abdomen. But they were searching for something within themselves that would help them get through all this. And I was so tense, I couldn't even think of home, and I realized that my home was a squad of Marines I was with. That was my home. And I grabbed my M1 rifle, hoping I could transfer some of the strength of that steel into myself. And we hit the beach. Well, hitting the beach, I looked over and there was a body of a Marine rolling in the surf, sort of a welcome to Iwo Jima. Well, we weren't in the first wave, and the beach then had been under fire from the cannons and the mortars from General Kurabachi's crew, and it was cluttered with bodies and with body parts and with jeeps, trucks, tanks, everything. It had mired down in this soft black sand. It was a chaotic scene. And our orders were to get off the beach as quickly as possible. Well, that was not as easier said than done. Crawling, clawing through that sand like coffee grounds. You couldn't get traction. But somehow we inched our way, and across 3 terraces, most of them were about 12 feet high. Under fire, guys died. There were many wounded. The Navy corpsmen were doing their very best to save lives and help them. But we inched our way across the 700 yards at the base of Mount Suribachi. Somehow, some of us got through, not all of us. We were subjected to fire from the pillboxes, bunkers, caves, tunnels. They were dug in so well that General Kurabachi, who of course was the commanding general, had told them they were going to die on the island. He said, "You will die, but before you die, at least take 10 Marines out." But he had imported mining engineers to dig 13 miles of tunnels under Iwo Jima, and the idea was that they were in Iwo Jima, we were on it, but it was not easy to turn your weapon into a worthy weapon in terms of visibility. You just couldn't see very many Japs, and I was frustrated along with a lot of others. I wanted to use my Garand rifle, but I didn't see targets. They were inside all those caves, pillboxes, and bunkers. However, we did finish crossing the island and pivoted to the right. At the time we were doing that, we took many, many casualties. That was the 26th Marines, my regiment. The 27th and the 28th Marines, the 28th Marines pivoted to the left, and their task was to take Mount Suribachi. And on February the 23rd, they sent a patrol up the mountain, and of course they planted a flag, and believe me, we were beyond Suribachi then. We were very glad to see that American flag flying on Mount Suribachi. And
did you actually see it being raised at the time, or just maybe after the fact?
After it was raised, no, I didn't see it being raised. But then that was only a few hours, and General
I'm going to set this right here if that's okay.
Oh, sure.
Yeah, go ahead.
Am I talking too soft?
No, you're perfect. I just wanted to get the full volume effect. So go ahead.
Okay. Colonel Chandler Johnson said he wanted a bigger flag there, and a few hours later they sent one up, and Joe Rosenthal, the Associated Press photographer, happened to be going up with them, and of course when they got ready to raise it, they found a pipe, and Joe Rosenthal just happened to snap a picture of it and sent it into Guam to be processed. But that's, of course, the famous picture we've all seen. We were mighty glad to see that too. However,
so you didn't see maybe the first flag, but did you see the famous iconic one being raised?
I didn't see it. No.
Oh.
No. We were pretty busy moving up, trying to stay alive and survive. But we did see it once. When people hollered, cheered, guns went off in the air, ships' horns went off on the first one, not the second one. and they tooted their whistles and everything else on the ships because they could see it from the ships. So it was quite a sight to see, and I'll never forget, as long as I live, that sight of that American flag flying on Mount Suribachi.
Now, I noticed you said Higgins boat. Is that the name of the craft, or was that y'all specific? Was there like names of these boats, or is it all of them called?
They
Higgins?
were really an LCVP, Landing Craft Vehicle Personnel, and they were built in New Orleans, Louisiana, by a feisty Irishman named Andrew Higgins.
Oh, so they were all called Higgins.
All called Higgins.
Okay.
Yeah, they were his. That was his name.
Now, in the Higgins boat, is this just your, I guess it would be your platoon, or how big of a force could be in there?
36.
36.
Marines. Yeah.
Which makes up is that a company, or I guess, I'm not too keen on the terminology, but...
Yes. Well, it goes from fire team of 4, then into a squad of 12, and then to a company, about 325, and then into a battalion, and then a regiment, and then a division, which is about 20,000.
So basically 3 squads in the Higgins boat. Okay.
Right.
Now, I guess, is the squad what you're most familiar with of these guys that you're always with, kind of, this is how you deploy as a squad, or I guess what are the guys around you usually? Are they your squad, or are they your platoon, or who's usually around you?
Usually what's around you is a squad, but on Iwo Jima it was chaotic, and we lost all that unit integrity, which is critical in a campaign. So a fire team, I was a rifleman, we had a fire team leader, corporal, who died on Iwo Jima, and our BAR man, Browning automatic rifle, Norman Felton, he died on Iwo Jima. And then the assistant BAR man who carried ammo. So there were 4 of us in a fire team.
And were you the only one to survive out of the 4?
I believe that, I believe I was, but I'm not sure about the assistant BAR man. Yes, the BAR man died. Our fire team leader, Pat Patriot, Chicopee Falls, Massachusetts, great guy. And myself, I survived. I don't remember for sure about the assistant BAR man.
What about your squad? Were you one of the, do you know what the casualty, obviously I think I've read that the casualty rates were something insane, for Iwo Jima. But what about for your squad? Do you remember kind of what the casualty makeup of that was?
Well, I can get some idea. I'm not sure I could be specific because we were not able to work as we would like to have worked as a squad, but overall most of them were either KIA or WIA because we had to bring in. After I left, I was wounded after 2 weeks, a couple of weeks, and so I can only know what I heard talking to the guys and what I've read in books. So it was a very intense and very terrible battle in terms of casualties. We had awful losses.
How many days before, so there's the initial landings, then how many days later was your landings after the initial? Do you remember?
Oh, I landed on D-Day, February 19th. I landed with my group, but it was not...
Yeah, but you can walk behind, it's fine.
Okay. It was not the first wave. We came in several waves later. It was early afternoon, and I forget the exact time, but the beach had already been decimated with casualties by the time we got in. But yes, we landed on D-Day, February 19th, and certainly were able to see what happened prior to our landing. The first few waves, they got in okay. General Karabachi let them in, so the beach would be cluttered with Marines of the 3 divisions, 3rd, 4th, and 5th. Well, really the 3rd was in reserve. So it was the 4th and 5th Marine Divisions landing on the beaches. And
what was the mood? Obviously, you guys knew you were being shipped out to Island X at the time.
Yes.
What was the gap in time between, you were on guard or patrol duty, stateside for a while. What was the gap between you knowing that you were going to be shipped out to the combat zone, Island X, and you actually arriving there? Was it a couple months, a couple weeks?
It was quite longer because we went to Guam and then we shipped back to Hawaii and took additional training. So I would say it was several months.
What was the mood? Obviously, nobody wants to be shipped out to a combat zone, in spite of everyone wanting the goodwill of what the forces were doing to happen. What was kind of the mood at the time for you and the other people around you training for this invasion? Was it, was there a lot of anticipation and ready to get in there, or was it, like you said, a lot of people trying to find themselves? Kind of, what was going on in those months leading up to it, the landing?
Training, honing us to a fine edge. A lot of patriotism was still there. Yes, guys were ready to go. They had a lot of esprit de corps. They were Marines. They had the weaponry. We had superb training, excellent officers, and we felt that victory was going to be ours regardless, and they were ready to go. It was certainly a patriotic group, to say the least, that went to Iwo Jima and other islands as well.
So there wasn't as much fear, I guess, in people that you saw the day of the actual landing? Was there more so just people were ready to do what they needed to do, basically?
Well, actually, to a degree, a lot of us were scared in many ways, but we were trained Marines and we respected the chain of command, and it was very important that you follow orders, and we did. We were trained to that degree, even though those orders might mean that you were going to become a casualty. So yes, they moved forward. They under fire. They knew that the enemy had registered their artillery, their mortars, not only from 550-foot Mount Suribachi, but they had registered their artillery from the northern highlands, where the command post of General Karabachi was, incidentally, 75 feet under concrete, steel, and sandstone. But yes, they were Marines, and they fought as Marines, and they moved forward. When ordered to do so, I did not see guys hesitate. I know as a rifleman, that was my job, to move out. And when I got the orders, there was no really thought process that occurred. It's been sunk probably years ago. It's rusting somewhere.
Right.
Or torn into parts.
Made into a coral reef.
There you go.
Fitting departure. So we were talking about, so the mood kind of leading up, a lot of patriotism, a lot of training, a lot of preparation.
Yes.
A couple months. Do you remember anything vividly from the day before, so February 18th, aboard the ship? Had you already arrived off the coast of the island, or were you still sailing towards it? Or, I guess, what was going on the day before? Do you remember?
Yes. February 18th, we were sailing towards Iwo Jima. We were not there yet. We arrived early that morning, and we were going through the usual shipboard PT long chow lines and monotony and chatter and so forth that guys do. But it was just more or less a very secure day that they were very careful about blackout curtains at night, that night, and they had guns mounted on the ship ready to fire. In fact, several times the Navy test fired them. They had lookouts for submarines with binoculars, and all that. But
did y'all know that the next day was going to be the invasion, or did they not let you know until up to the very last?
we knew.
You knew.
Yes, we knew.
Did you guys know that it was going to be as formidable of a challenge as it turned out to be?
No, we did not. We had gone over the topography, maps, charts, different relief maps, so forth. We were quite aware of the shape of the island, like a pork chop. We had no idea that there were 22,000, most of them underground, on the island, because it had been bombarded for 72 days by planes and ships at different times. So some officers were saying, well, there won't be much left there. It couldn't be with all the bombardment. And
so probably what intelligence couldn't tell you was who was underground.
That's right. So some of them said, 3 days and we'll be out of there. Well, some officers took that with a grain of salt too, particularly General Howland Mad Smith, who said, no, it's going to be a tough one. Well, he was right. But we had no idea that there was that much enemy power, I guess, left, or the enemy of capability to strike us and kill us. In terms of the intelligence that we worked with, it was quite a difference.
Now, because you were injured, was this your first and only battle in World War II?
Yes, this is my. We were supposed to go in Guam, but they sent us out, and so they sent us to Iwo Jima, and went being wounded. I ended up in hospital in Guam, Pearl Harbor, Frisco, back in Pensacola.
How many days were you in the battle before you had the shrapnel?
About 2 weeks.
2 weeks.
2 weeks, yeah.
And probably the worst. Would that be the worst 2 weeks of your life?
Yes, it was certainly, because death was imminent. You had, very close knowledge, seeing all your buddies being either killed or wounded. It was.
Did you have any? Obviously, you were shrapneled, and that's not a very positive thing. But did you have any other worse close calls that could have? I guess at any moment something could happen, but was there anything vivid that sticks out in your mind?
Oh, yeah.
That was...
Every day, just about, it seemed like there was a close call. For instance, when we were first moved in and we were at the base of Mount Suribachi, a big mortar shell landed right just a few yards from me, say to the end of this couch. And if it hadn't been for that soft, black, volcanic ash where this shell went down and was buried, I wouldn't be here. It would, if it had detonated on the surface, it would...
Solid ground.
But it went down into the ground, and I was peppered with, and the foxhole buddy of mine, we were peppered with black sand, got in our rifles, got face, got in our hair. It was another close call. Another one later on was I got in a grenade fight. It was one morning further up the island towards the north end, towards Catano Point, and this grenade came sailing through the air, and I turned my head, and say from here to my face was a yellow, I can still see it, yellow and black Japanese hand grenade.
2 feet from your face.
Oh yeah, yeah. And I was in my foxhole. That saved my life. And there was no thinking, no thought process. I immediately went down. My head
And
went,
so obviously it would have went over
and it blew up over. Otherwise, I wouldn't be here.
Is it true that there's no such thing as a non-believer in a foxhole?
I can't answer that. I
Can't speak for everybody.
I can't, but possibly that's true. I just don't know. I was a Christian prior to being in the Marines, so that was not, being a believer was not a problem, but there were services. The chaplains came up to reserve areas and held services during the battle. And of course the cemetery was there, and they had services dedicating the cemetery with thousands of young Marines buried in it on the Iwo Jima. But
go ahead.
Yeah,
sorry.
no.
I didn't mean to. So you've talked about a couple very vivid memories, and obviously awful 2 weeks. The vivid memory of landing and seeing the devastation already on the beach, and the couple of close calls. What were some? Obviously, you've probably got several vivid memories. Talk to me some more about, I guess, some of the things that stick out most from those 2 weeks. Some other incidents.
Oh,
Obviously, the good and the bad. The raising of the flag and.
yes, that was, of course, foremost in my thinking. I'll never forget that. Being bracketed, that was no fun.
What is it called?
Bracketed.
Bracketed.
That's where the enemy artillery fires roughly 50 yards over you, 50 yards under you, and then you know the next shell is going. So you're warned that there's a shell burst, and I didn't like being bracketed.
So that's another instance of a close call.
Oh yes. But
some luck involved.
It didn't land in my foxhole. I thought it was. Night was a time of terror, infiltration. They would slither along the ground, and they had grenades, they had bayonets, and they wanted to get up to your foxhole and toss in a grenade or stab you with their bayonet, Japanese bayonet. Nighttime was terrible, and you had 2 men foxholes, and you're 2 hours on and 2 hours off, and it was very hard to stay awake because you'd been under duress all during the day, being under fire. So it was hard to get any sleep at all. You really didn't get much.
So that probably 2 weeks is the least amount of sleep you've probably gotten in your life.
That's true.
Did you, well, obviously you were injured, so it's a little bit different of a circumstance, but did you get a good rest? You might have been in pain, but did you get a good rest maybe after you had left those 2 weeks?
Well, yes, it was morphine induced. And yes, I got a shot of morphine not too long after I was hit. The corpsman came up and bandaged me, checked my wounds, and then gave me a shot of morphine. So stretcher bearers did come up, bless their hearts, put me on a stretcher, and I went to a Jeep near the battalion aid station, and they checked me over again and said, I had a tag, I remember the tag was green, said critical, because I was hit here. And they sent me to the beach, and the beach was again covered with stretcher cases, and so many guys had been hit. But the rest I got was actually aboard the hospital ship. Again, went from the Jeep on the beach to a stretcher, and then was put aboard a Higgins boat again, and went out to the, I believe it was the USS Hope, I'm not sure. And
A lot going on. There's not time to keep track of everything.
Yeah, a little hazy full of morphine. But they dropped some cables down, and then they hoisted us up, and they looked at my tag and said, he's going to the OR. Well, to answer your question about sleep, the doctor in the operating room aboard ship said, I want you to start counting to 10. And he had a wad of cotton in his hand, and he laced it with ether, and then he shoved that in my face. I didn't get to 10, but I got some sleep.
Where'd you wake up at? Same place?
Oh no, I was in a ward somewhere, I don't know where, aboard the ship. And then we sailed, I don't know when, a few days later to Guam. And it was an Army hospital. We were in tents. We were in cots. An obligation to tell them about history like it was firsthand. I don't think it's all in history books, so I can answer questions and I can tell them about a heritage that they have a right to be very proud of, because so many young teenagers lost their lives in combat against an enemy that was ready to take over our country. And there were 26 medals of honor awarded for battle on Iwo Jima. And many of those were guys that took their bodies and threw them on hand grenades to protect their buddies and keep them from dying. We have one here in the Gainesville, Melrose, Dwayne Dewey.
Yep, I've talked to him before.
Yeah,
got my picture with him.
Yeah, Dwayne Dewey, Medal of Honor, Korea now.
Korea, I know. And he got shot while he was getting medical attention, threw himself on a hand grenade, and then got shot again.
Yes.
That is a wonder that he was able to come out in good of a shape as he seems to be even today. And
it's amazing.
Do you find that therapeutic in a way to be able to relay that to high schoolers, and does it help this, to be able to be that firsthand history for them?
Not really, Mike. I don't see it as therapeutic. I honestly, at this stage of my life, I don't feel I even need it. I feel it more as a responsibility to convey to them our history, being a history teacher. And that to me is a motivation to let them know that the freedom they're enjoying right today just didn't happen. A lot of guys sacrificed their lives for that freedom. And it was certainly something that none of us can ever forget. I'm talking about World War II, because they had not only fired on us, they had a submarine off of Santa Barbara, California, and fired on our oil fields. There's no one to stop them. They sent on the jet stream, I guess, fire balloons, incendiary balloons, over and started fires in Oregon, Washington. And
some little untold stories, I guess, about I know Pearl Harbor obviously is the most devastating, but there were these kind of secondhand attacks on the coast.
A lot of stories that.
And I know that there was also German U-boats pretty close in the Atlantic as well.
Oh yes, we had brownouts, blackouts, and we were silhouetting ships while the lights are on, and Florida was here, the ships were here, and the submarines were here. Well, the lights were silhouetting, so the submarine just blew them up. And it was pretty hard to.
Did you, when you were, on the island, and I know it's probably a little bit harder to, confront this question, but did you ever face Japanese enemies like face to face, or was it usually at a distance, or I guess what was the relationship with, or what sticks out in your mind? Did they ever charge it to you to where you could literally see them? No,
they did not.
Probably they did to a lot of Marines, but not in your case.
Some at night I did see them, but they weren't charging at me. They were crawling around the ground like a snake. And the grenade fight that I alluded to earlier, he kept himself hidden in a trench. He was throwing grenades, but I was throwing them right back at him. Not his, but mine. But he was only, 30, the most, 25, 30 yards away. But as far as charging at me with a bayonet or anything, no, that did not occur. Although there was times when I wish they had, because I had a good M1 Garand rifle and I could pop them off. But they didn't. That didn't really occur. They were hidden. They were in caves. They were in bunkers, pillboxes. Now at times, when a tank came up, I don't remember calling the tank. I didn't. But a tank came up and I could see very clearly a Jap came out of a spider trap. Maybe from here to the fireplace to that tank, and he had a magnetic mine. I can still see it about like this. And he ran up to the side of the tank before I could get a shot off and slapped that against the side of the tank and then dove right back into a spider hole. Boom, that went off and the tank slipped into down the side of a small ridge there. I don't know if any were killed or not, but the Jap was gone. He went, apparently there was a tunnel to that spider hole. But this happened at times, but as far as charging me, now I had a K-bar knife. I've got one in here, I'll show you. I was ready at night to, I didn't even keep it in here. I stuck it in the side of my foxhole so I could get it out real quick. But I had a bayonet and, of course, my M1 Garand rifle. But
do you mind me asking if you had any confirmed kills on Iwo Jima?
Oh, well, yes. I'm pretty sure the guy that I was in a grenade fight, I got him because it stopped and he was throwing grenades, and I figured the last one I threw was right on target. I didn't see it hit him because he was hidden. I'm pretty sure I got him. Then there was an officer about 200 yards away, completely dressed, had
Japanese.
Japanese, had map case, binoculars, and he was up on the slope of a hill spotting, the troops in the 27th Regiment next to it. And I saw him a couple hundred yards away. Well, that was a chip shot with an M1 rifle. And I popped him pretty good.
In the head?
Oh, it's a headshot, yeah. He was nattily dressed. I couldn't believe how well he was dressed.
And in the open. In the open,
yes.
Was that hard? Was it hard to bring yourself to do that, or was it kind of at the time? Because obviously it's another human. Obviously they would just as soon kill you as you would,
Yeah.
But was that hard to pull the trigger at the time?
Absolutely not. No. I had no remorse. I was looking for more targets. I would have gladly shot them if I saw any more. Unfortunately, I didn't see very many because they were underground. But no, I had no remorse, no misgivings, no feelings. I was good. I was an expert rifleman and a good shot, and had no qualms about killing him because I had seen too many of my buddies die.
Firsthand,
yes.
Right there in front of you.
Right there in, my outfit.
How many would you, again, another probably difficult question, but how many fellow Marines would you say that you firsthand saw,
Gosh. I would... So I get killed, you mean?
Yes.
Near me?
Yeah.
Oh, maybe a handful.
There's a lot going on, jungle,
it's
and
hard to say. If he drops, I don't know if he died or if we had to keep moving, or if he was wounded.
Any of your close personal friends? Obviously, the two gentlemen in your, firing squad that you know of.
Very, very close friends. My best buddy was Harvest McDonald. I named my son after him, and that's my son there when he was a young boy, right there on the fireplace.
Right circle, or
no, right there.
left.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, that's him, the young man. I have other. He was a fire rescue man. He lived till he's 54. I named my son after my very best buddy, Harvest McDonald, who was killed after I had left the island, was wounded, and he was awarded the nation's third highest award, the Silver Star, for his valor in combat.
Was he in your, again, going back to the military structure, was he in your company or?
Yeah.
He company?
Yes, but he wasn't in my fire team or squad.
What company?
But we were good friends,
Okay.
and he was a rifleman. He ended up as a squad leader, really, because so many were killed. It seemed like officers, there were radiomen, flamethrowers, and officers that now they hit all their, their bars and everything, but see, they were out there behind the front line a little bit giving orders. Well, the Japs knew that. They became a target.
With the bracketing.
And our lieutenant of our platoon, a great guy, Lieutenant John Phelps, died on Iwo Jima, and he was KIA, and so many. Our Lieutenant Colonel, Tom Trotty, and our executive officer, Major Day, were behind the lines as they should have been, and a mortar landed right in their foxhole and blew them both to pieces. It just seemed like so many officers, Mike, were targeted during that battle.
And Harvest was a officer at the time?
No, he wasn't an officer. He was a PFC.
And did you ever get the full story? Obviously, there's probably, records of, what happened to him at the time, or?
I have in my book of the 5th Marine Division his name. There's no story on him. His parents, and I wish I had a copy, and I got word that he died and he'd been killed, and it really broke me up. Tears were running down my face because Harvest and I were such great friends, and we had made a vow aboard ship before we went into combat that if you get hit, I will visit your folks, and if you get hit, I'll visit your folks. Well, as it turned out, I did visit his folks up in the farm country of Alabama. Wonderful, down-to-earth people, and they were heartbroken.
You didn't tell, they had known beforehand?
Oh yes, they knew, yes. But I was welcomed as part of the family, and because he had written and told them that, that I may come visit if anything happened. And I did the same with my parents. So
I bet your parents were pretty relieved at the outcome with you.
Yes, they were.
Did you have any siblings?
Oh yeah.
Brothers?
Yes, I
Brothers,
had
sisters?
2 sisters.
2 sisters.
Yes, that was it. And in fact, I just talked to one the other night. She's still living. One is. But yes, I had 2 sisters. We were 3 children of the family. My father was an engineer, graduated from Cornell University, and it was we were a very close family.
Were they hesitant about you signing up for the Marines?
Well, I was 18, and I just went down. I said, I want to be a Marine. They said, raise your hand.
And that was it.
I do. You're in. But the people, the Marines that served overall, I'm just so proud of them proud of being a Marine, Mike, because here are young men facing fire that dealt death. And yet when the word came out, okay, move out, they moved out and moved into that fire where there's a Nambu machine gun, an Arasaki rifle, whatever it was. They did what had to be done. And I was so proud to be a part of them because they were, in essence, defending our country. And yet so many of them, as you well know, died in the process.
Before I forget to ask, was the vow that you made with Harvest, was that the night before or the day before Iwo Jima?
Oh, yes, it was aboard ship.
The day, was it the specific
I don't know
day
if
before?
the day
Shortly
maybe
before.
a couple days,
Shortly
3 days before. Before we went down the cargo nets and got aboard the Higgins boat.
And you were still 18 at the time? Or had you turned 19?
Oh, no, I was older. I was 20, I think,
20.
then, because I'd gone back from Guam to Hawaii and did additional training. Yeah, so I think it was 20. So we had made that vow, and we weren't the only ones. Other guys made that vow. But that was so personal, you know, with him that I felt, I still remember him very clearly. Wonderful guy and very intelligent, very quiet, but he certainly
How old
served
was
his
he at the
country.
time?
I don't know his age.
Probably around
Same as
your
mine,
right.
practically,
Right.
yeah.
Now, was pretty much, you know, you were there for 2 weeks, so you weren't there for the final
Oh, no.
victory, if that can be said, you know, on Iwo Jima.
No.
Is the only, I guess, the positive scene that you saw was the raising of the flag? Was that the only thing to celebrate at the time?
The very positive thing, I think, Mike, that I felt about it was the fact that we were a group of Marines that followed orders, and not blindly, but
You didn't get that.
yes, I think that the pride in knowing that young American Marines went into the face of fire, whether it was from a cave, whether it was a bunker, pillbox, when ordered to do so in spite of the danger that moving forward called. And that stayed with me and still does. And I talk about it when I go to schools and say that I was very proud to be a part of that organization. In fact, on November the 8th, I have to go up to St. Simon's Island off the coast of Georgia. Maybe you've been there.
Nope. Heard it though.
I have to give a talk to the Marine Corps birthday ball because November 10th is Marine Corps birthday, and the next day is Veterans Day. So it's a busy month. But I have to give a talk on November the 8th up there about the battle for Iwo Jima. I hope they don't throw me out the back door.
I'm sure they'll be more respectful than that, hopefully.
I hope not. I hope they don't. But anyhow, yes, yes, the flag raised, seeing that flag flying on Mount Suribachi, oh, what a feeling that was. But just knowing that young Americans served their country in the way they did, and being part of them, being with them, going forward when ordered to. In fact, at one time, I don't even remember giving any thought. My legs were moving before he finished. I heard what he says, Gasche, move out. And I was on my way, but zigzagging.
Was there, so obviously, you know, the positive aspects of the group camaraderie and in the flag being raised. What were some of the more, I guess, kind of the horrific scenes that you saw? For example, when you first landed, there was obviously a body.
Yeah, rolling in the surf,
right.
Yes.
What were some other, I guess, things that probably aren't too pleasant that you had seen when you were there and for your 2 weeks?
Well, I guess seeing bodies of dead Marines. Some of them actually turned blue for some reason. Seeing parts, that was pretty horrific. The idea of young men's lives being snuffed out before they had a chance to do anything in their life was pretty hard to reflect upon. That was hard, and certainly the beach was cluttered with so many.
When you first landed?
Yes, when I first landed, it was.
Because that first
D-Day,
wave.
D-Day.
Yeah.
It was very hard to see that because these were guys my age or younger. Some of them were younger, snuffed out and no longer had a life to live.
What was so obviously you weren't in the first wave, but still
No.
D-Day. What was the landing like? Obviously the first wave had maybe cleared out some of the obstacle that you would have faced there on the beach. Was it a very D-Day like Europe D-Day where you had to go over the side of the boat and rush up? Was it still under heavy fire, or was it just come out the front, run to cover? Or I guess what was the scene like there when you first went from the Higgins boat to a destination on the island?
Mm-hmm. Well, no, it wasn't cleared out. It was jammed with debris, with the chaos of war, if you will, the detritus of war. Jeeps, tanks, trucks, every imaginable vehicle was swamped in the sand. They couldn't get traction. So the beach was very cluttered with, again, wounded and the Navy corpsmen tending to them and the bodies. It was not a cleared area at all. First wave, yes. First, second, third wave, they moved right in. But then General Kurabachi had them open up. So when we got there, it was very cluttered. It had everything imaginable. Even small boats had swamped in the surf. It was just a time where it was hard to find yourself. It had so much going on, and it seemed like every minute something was happening, something new. It was not a time, of course, the noise level, mortars, artillery, R's going over our head, so forth.
I know you said you saw the one body rolling in the surf. Was that just the first one that stuck out, and there were several others across the ground, or was it just the one at the time, or when you first arrived?
Well, the first one rolling in the surf stood out, yes.
But there was probably others.
Oh yes, and as we moved up the beach, there were others, but this guy, whoever he was rolling,
As the waves.
Yeah, the waves. Then he rolled back, and anyway, that kind of stuck out with me. Others were quite inert. They weren't, of course, moving around much, and it was something that I guess none of us never expected because of the intensity of the fire from Mount Suribachi and the Northern Highlands. What devastation it was causing.
Which side of the aisle were you on about the resistance that would be on Iwo Jima? I know you said earlier some were, saying that, okay, there's not going to be resistance. We've bombed this place. We shelled this place. Others were a little bit more hesitant and took that with a grain of salt, like you said. Which side of the aisle were you on in anticipation the night before and up till you realized what was actually going on?
Well, we were on the eastern side.
Oh, sorry, not physical side, but did you think that it was going to be a strong resistance, or were you believing some folks who were saying we've bombed this place, there's not going to be any resistance?
My reaction to your question is this: I was very uncertain. I did not know. I was just a private with an M1 Garand rifle who had received a lot of training. I really didn't have any real strong feelings about the length of the battle until I got into it. Then it changed. But no, I had no idea that it would be easy. Would it be long? Would it be hard? It was just a Marine moving into an invasion beach, ready to go, whatever the orders were to do, but without any concept relative to time or intensity of fire until I got there.
Over the 2 weeks, as the 2 weeks progressed, was it a constant advancement inwards towards the island and you were digging new foxholes pretty frequently, or was it a lot of stalemate, you're in the same foxhole for several days? What was kind of the progression during the 2 weeks across the island that you were there?
It varied. At times we did go in reserve, and we were back quite a ways from the front line, although you're still under fire on Iwo Jima. There was no safe haven. But we would go up. One regiment would get orders to take over the front lines. Well, they were there maybe for 2 or 3 days, and then depending upon the intensity of the Japanese fire, another regiment would come through them after a barrage, and the regiment they relieved would go back in reserve. So because the casualties were so high, they had to change that quite a bit.
So it was a lot of you were rotating in and out of the front line quite a bit.
We were rotating. That's a good word.
Yeah. We
were rotating because of the casualties and the fact that it was awful hard to see where the enemy was. So many flamethrowers were hit because they were a prime target. Demolition men who we would button up the cave, of course, with our automatic fire with Browning machine guns or BAR, Browning automatic rifle, or M1 Garand. But there was still an aura of danger going up with some TNT blocks and shoving it into a hole quite a bit. But they did it, and it was just something that I'll never forget. The bravery of those guys going up either with flamethrower, demolition charges, or whatever, and doing what had to be done to eliminate the enemy. Now, we did have some help. We had what's called the Canine Corps. Those are dogs trained to go in these tunnels and tear at the neck of the Japanese. And they were mostly Doberman pincers. But if they were available, we could call them up, and the trainer, not us, the trainer would send them into the cave, and they came, the Japanese were scared to death of those dogs. I would be too. But they'd come running out. And then, of course, we could cut them down with automatic fire. But we had other things, what we called Zippo Tanks with flamethrowers, modified tanks with flamethrowers, 75s, 105s. We could request bulldozers if we couldn't button up a cave very well, and bulldozers were available. We could request one, they could come up and shovel dirt into the entrance of the cave and seal them in there. And it was interesting too. We knew this, we'd been told they lived under what the Japanese did, under the Bushido Code, and that called for a no surrender. And many of them took the honorable way out, and that was to take a grenade and put it up to your neck. And
Did you ever see that?
no, I didn't.
You heard
see
it? Did you ever could you hear it going on in caves?
We heard some noises. I think that was hand grenades going off. Yes, but I didn't see it. No.
What would you? What was I about to say? So, there's a lot going on. You've got your own airstrikes. You've got artillery rounds from both sides.
Sure.
Bullets. Did you feel like you were probably about to have a heart attack at the time, or kind of? I guess what's the mindset with such intensity constantly going on? Obviously you had the training, but no training can fully prepare you.
That's so true.
For something. I mean, what's the mindset of just the constant barrage of everything?
It varied. Mike's survival was a factor. You wanted to get your foxhole deep enough where you could hunker down in there and not be into the flow of the shrapnel and bullets. You certainly wanted to communicate with your buddy and keep, I think the conversation, two-man foxholes, I think the conversation helped.
Did you ever lose somebody you were in a foxhole with?
Oh, yeah.
Like they literally were shot when they were right there beside you?
Not while I was in the foxhole, no. No, the closest thing that happened was when a hand grenade went off next to my head, but I ducked. But my foxhole buddy, well, yes, he was killed about a week after I left the island.
Was that one of the people you were in the firing squad with? Or just some, like as you said, the ranks kind of disassociate and everything's just a free-for-all. Was it just some random Marine that you met there?
No, that was Pat Patry, our fire team leader. He was a corporal from Chicopee Falls, Massachusetts. Fine person.
Did you say Pat?
Pat Patry.
Patry.
Yeah. Patry, yes. Patrie, I believe.
Okay.
I've got it in a book to get the correct spelling. Okay. I can show you. But no, he wasn't killed in the foxhole with me, no. Although we had stuff going by. But
did you ever see rounds literally fly over your head? Like
yes.
Bullet rounds?
They had some crude rockets. No, bullets were pretty fast. I didn't see those.
Right.
Rockets, I saw the launching pad of them. They were boards nailed together to a V, and it was tilted. And they fired. They called them, I think, screaming memes or something like that. And they're big rockets. They weren't effective. They weren't accurate, but they're very crude. But yes, you could see them going through the air. Yes.
Did you ever see anybody get hit by a mortar or explosive shell? Any Marines?
Not that I recollect, although one guy called me over to his foxhole and said, "Look, I want you to see this." And right in the edge of a foxhole was a knee mortar. Fortunately,
didn't detonate.
Dud. And did I tell you this?
No, go for it. Yeah.
Oh,
yeah.
And he said he wouldn't be there. Of course, that hadn't been a dud. But as far as actually seeing someone blown up, no, I don't recollect that.
But one of the foxholes near you literally had a rocket stuck in the dirt.
Yes.
Was it still smoking?
A knee mortar.
Was it still, they smoke a little bit, or it was just, it's there?
It was inert. No, he was very careful. In fact, he probably wanted to dig another foxhole. Oh,
but y'all, did you help him get it out, or I guess what do you do when there's like a dud like that? Do you have to pull it out, or?
No, I got away from it. I don't know what he did.
Because they could still go off, couldn't they?
Oh yes, it could go off anytime. He was a dud. Sure. I walked by one that was a 16-incher from a battleship. It was, well, about as big as that doorway, only, round. What am I trying to say? shape of a shell. And it was a dud, and I had just come upon it, and I said, look, I very carefully walked away slowly. But that was a huge 16-incher that, I didn't see many of those, but of the frame.
Obviously, because most of them would have detonated, but...
Yeah, but it was just laying there. I walked by, whoa.
Did you write anything when you were actually on in Iwo Jima? Or obviously you probably would have sent letters beforehand and after,
Yeah.
but did you write anything when you were actually in the foxhole at night, or
No, I didn't
No
write
time to-
anything, but I received mail.
while you were on Iwo Jima?
Yes,
Wow.
from home. They had mail call. That was very important. It was a morale booster. But and we received. I received some crumbs, and that my mother knew I liked fudge.
Crumbs. Wow.
They
Over
were,
the mail.
yeah, just crumbs, hard. Crumbs.
Just in an envelope.
Well, in a box.
Oh, in a
small
box, okay.
Yeah. They were, and I shared the crumbs, but it was not. I'm sure when she sent it, it was nice little squares of fudge. But I still remember those.
So while you were on Iwo Jima, you actually received fudge
Yes,
from your mom. Wow.
Yeah.
I'll be darned.
sure. Oh yeah, they were adamant about getting us our mail and any packages. And for the first time, we were getting live blood for the wounded. And
Now with the mail call, obviously everyone, the mail that's coming in,
yes.
everyone wouldn't have survived that. Did they call people out by name, or did you go pick it up, or how did that?
Yeah, they brought it to you and said,
Specifically, so they wouldn't have to
Yeah,
call
yeah.
people out by names.
They
That probably
brought it.
would have been.
they brought it to us. Yeah, and like water. Gosh, we had guys that were bringing water up in trucks, and the snipers were. You see, the Japanese had a great water problem. They had cisterns. I walked by one. It was maybe this big. It was a concrete cistern scooped out, like a shell. And if it rained, they had water. If it didn't, they were without water, because we had our ships surrounding the island, and no reinforcements could get through, no water. But they were hurting for water badly.
And there was no surrender. You never saw any attempt. Did you ever see any attempt at surrender? I know there was a couple captives took from Iwo Jima, but very, very few.
Very few. No,
Probably against their will.
Nothing happened like that. But toward the end, when the island, after 36 days, the island was declared secure, there were
Still remnants of the resistance.
several, 100 or so that did surrender. And it was, I don't know the exact amount, but somebody.
Have you ever met any of them?
No, I've never met any of them. But they were hurting for water. Well, we were too, because the guys bringing up water to us were getting killed by snipers. So they changed the mechanism and brought water up at dusk in weasels.
Weasels.
Weasel.
Is that code for something?
No, it's a small tank.
Oh, tank.
Low
Okay.
silhouette, very low silhouette, small tank, a very good cargo space, and they brought water up in jerry cans in a weasel. And that's how we got water at night. But sometimes we were kind of low, but particularly, and it's interesting, this came up because water made me mad one day. I had
Water. Of all things.
It made me mad because I think I told you, this sergeant said, "Gasche, move out," and I did. And I went up, and 100 yards is a long distance on Iwo Jima. But I did get up about 100 yards, I guess, and I came to a ridge, and I started to dig in. And I'd taken off my cartridge belt, and attached to each cartridge belt is a canteen on each side of you. And I set it aside and was digging in. Well, right about then, a Nambu machine gun opened up, and he wanted, of course, to stitch me, which...
So another close call.
Oh, yeah, another one.
Were bullets literally landing all around you?
I'm sorry?
Were bullets from the machine gun landing around you?
Oh, no, they went about 2 feet from me, or 1.5 feet, and went into my canteens that I had set down, and my cartridge belt had holes in it, and I hit the deck, went down. And I
Did you have a foxhole at the time?
No, I was digging one.
Oh.
I wasn't.
So you were in the process of digging a foxhole.
Right.
And you came under fire.
Right.
As you were doing that.
Right. Only he missed me by about 1.5 feet. And I looked over there, and here was my water that I needed running out of the canteens.
The whole island at that time when you were shot at, were you the forwardmost
I
Marine?
could have been. In fact, I thought over and over, well, didn't my advance of 100 yards start the new line of defense for the 26th Regiment and then the 27th Regiment? And the only answer I could come up with was yes. My running through and not getting stitched is where the line was started, and we stayed there for 2 or 3 days where I had started to dig in.
And that was the forwardmost position?
Yeah, that was a forwardmost position.
So you were, at the time, the forwardmost. How long before your command, was it your company commander or your firing squad leader, the one you were saying that passed away, Mr. Patry? Was it him that ordered you to?
Fire team leader.
Right.
Yeah, Corporal Pat Patry. How long?
Or I guess who ordered you forward? Was it him?
Oh, sergeant. No, it was a sergeant.
Okay.
And I even forget who
A sergeant ordered you.
Yeah.
And
he said, Gasche, move out. And I've said it before. I moved out. But as far as I know now, there may have been others. I was the foremost Marine at that time on the island because the line was built there across that point where I had advanced.
Have you thought about that before? How you were the...
Yes, I thought about it. I said, oh my gosh, did I start all that? But I, as far as I know now, there may have been others, but I don't know of any. I couldn't see any ahead of me. Only, Japanese positions. But behind me were all the lines. And then they moved up and formed on where I was.
How long between you moving out and them advancing?
Oh, gosh.
Minutes?
No.
Hours?
No. Maybe, I would guess 10 minutes or so, because they didn't want to go up there and get shot like I want. I don't blame them. Maybe 5 minutes, 10 minutes.
Is that how you successively took the island? Is just constant line advancement? I guess that's really the only way to do it.
It was sporadic. There were places like Hill 362, 382 that were tenaciously defended. And it was very hard to get the Japanese out of those cracks in the rocks and where they were dug in. So it depended upon the terrain, Mike, whether we would advance or come in, in a line. No, it wasn't a straight line. At times, yes. But you would run into these obstacles. Rocky Gorge up at the north end was, I was gone now, but it was horrible, the way they had to bring in mostly tanks and get them out of there, blast them with 75mm cannon, so forth. So there were obstacles that delayed any advance whatsoever, and they would try to take it they would hold it for a while, and then the Japanese would counterattack, and they had to come back down. And that happened on 362, 382, and I have a book that shows all that if you're interested.
Yeah.
But, you know, it's something that the terrain dominated pretty well your motion in advance.
Was how did somebody get picked to be that person who runs out in advance of the line? Is it just random, whoever's there at the time kind of thing, or volunteers, or I guess he just spotted you and said, you know, move out, or I guess there's not really any way of knowing what his thought process.
Well, yes, there is. There were duties relative to each fire team position. In other words, I was a rifleman. Okay, that was my job, to be kind of a rifleman scout. You go out first. The fire team leader doesn't go out first. He provides cover. The Browning automatic rifleman, he provides cover with his 20-round BAR. The guy that goes out is a rifleman, and we knew it. That's what you do, and that's what we did. That was somewhat. Now, it may be that the rifleman was hurt, wounded, and somebody else had to go, or maybe somebody just guys would get so frustrated. They would see their buddies killed or something, and they lose it, and they charge into a bunker pillbox, and some of them lost their lives.
And you saw that firsthand?
No, I don't remember that.
It sounds like some of the
I read about it, and certainly. Maybe you've read the book. Chuck Tatum wrote "Red Blood, Black Sand."
I've heard of it.
Yeah,
I've never read it.
It's in there, okay. I think. Yeah. So some guys just lose all fear of anything like death and just go and want to kill the enemy. But I don't recollect that really. It was usually the rifleman that would go out, you know.
And that's why you were the foremost Marine at the time.
As far as I know, I very well could have been, because I didn't see anybody along. They were back behind me. And to run 100 yards on Iwo Jima, wait a minute, You don't usually do that. Sometimes it was a lot less.
What is the feeling like today? Obviously, there was a lot of anti-Japanese sentiment at the time, and rightfully so. And today, you know, all those leaders who were the ones responsible are now gone, and Japanese is a very different country. Is there still a lot of anti-Japanese feeling from Americans who were around at that time, or has there been, you know, is it a situation where you could meet a Japanese veteran of World War II and be okay with that, or is it hard, you know, having lived through such basically just hell at the time? Would it be hard for you to do something like that, do you think?
Well, that's an interesting question, because it occurs. I had an invitation just recently, in fact in March. Some of the young Marine groups, leaders and young Marines are going to Iwo Jima. And there's a ceremony. They've been there before, for several years. And there's a ceremony that is up on top of Mount Suribachi, where they shake hands, and they have Japanese flags, American flags, and they tell me about their experiences, how some of them will hug the Japanese and Japanese will hug them. The animosity has melted. Now, are there some guys that are holdouts? Yes. Your question too embraced, would it be hard for you to go up there and shake hands with a Japanese descendant? Probably not, you know, one that fought there, mostly descendant. And women come to that. And the answer is yes, it would be hard for me to do that. I would be hesitant. Many are not. it changed so much. It's a different world, Mike. Japan has emerged as a very powerful industrial nation, and certainly isn't going to, they have no army or navy, hardly. They're not going to war, but the memories do linger, and some, and I'm one of them. But many veterans see this as a catharsis, and go back, and I've read in several books, they felt better about having been there, talked to them, visited these spots, and I can't do that.
You haven't been back.
No, I had
You
the
wouldn't.
opportunity, all expenses paid. First go to the island of Guam, and then go over to Iwo Jima, and it was an awesome opportunity, and I realized, no, I cannot. I lost too many buddies in that battle, and it could not occur for me to undergo the trauma of returning to that island where I had been so close to death myself, and so many of my buddies died there. No, I could not go back.
Would that have probably been the second hardest thing that you would ever have to do? The first obviously being on Iwo Jima originally. The second would be returning. If you had actually decided to go back, would that have been probably the second most difficult thing you've had to do, is go back to the place where the most challenge that you ever had to face, those 2 weeks? Would that have been just a near impossible challenge to overcome going back, had you decided to do it?
Yes, it probably would have been a very distinct challenge which I can't decide, even though I had the opportunity. Yes, it would have been very, very hard because I would see spots, places where I had been and maybe dug a foxhole or something, or see a fire port where they were shooting at me and my friends. It would not be anything that I would, if you will, find it as I said, catharsis. No enjoyment, and I will not put myself through that. No. And
where were you for, probably a more positive note, where were you for VE and VJ Day? Do you remember?
Yes, I was at Camp Lejeune, North Carolina.
For both?
Yes. Well, let me think. Was it both? VJ Day.
I believe VJ Day would have been May 2nd, right?
Yeah.
And then obviously
September
VJ...
2nd.
Oh, September.
Yeah, peace treaty was signed for ending World War II, September 2nd. I said, wait a minute, doctor. And he said, oh, it'll be all right.
Is it still there?
Yeah, parts of it. Very minute parts, I guess. But
so there's still Japanese mortar.
It'll travel, and small parts will come out. Well, it did. It traveled. He said, no, it won't bother you. No, won't be infection. Yeah, thanks, Doc. But he was right. If some are in there, it's very minute. But it wasn't minute when I tried to go through an airport in Atlanta several years ago.
Really? Did you have to explain? Do you remember what year that was?
No, I don't. It was in Atlanta, and I didn't
within the
make
past
it.
Decade, maybe.
Oh, maybe longer. I don't know. I didn't make it through that
metal detector.
And he said, you can go over there. And they took a wand, and they went over me. Oh, my body with a wand, whatever. And I explained to them what had happened. And he was quite understanding, and he wanted to hear about Iwo Jima. The guy that, but he let me through, yeah. But I didn't make it through the doorway.
Wow. Is that the only time that's happened?
Yeah, the only time. I can probably go through it, go out to the airport and get through today. Mm-hmm.
So you don't remember, I guess, specifically where you were for VJ, the announcement that the Japanese had surrendered?
Either I was at home on that leave of 30 days or at Camp Lejeune, North Carolina.
So it
Yeah.
wasn't
And
as.
then it was just
I mean, y'all knew victory was imminent, so
Oh,
it
yeah.
wasn't as. It was a slow transition and not just like a
Yeah,
all of a sudden kind of thing. So it's not like
Right.
there was any specific moment
right,
that was absolutely memorable.
right. It was something we were pretty sure that it was just, the atomic bomb had been dropped, and
So you knew it was coming.
Oh, yeah.
Do you remember where you were for the A bomb, first A bomb?
No, I don't. I can't remember, Mike.
You were busy recovering. Right. Yeah.
Yeah, trying to recover,
Um,
but I can't remember specifically.
Did you want to get back to combat? Did you feel bad about? Obviously, you had done your service. You had been injured. There was nothing more that you could do. Did you want to? I know that some people want to return to combat, and in fact, as one of the Band of Brothers documentaries points out, one of the Medal of Honor of winners, I think from Guadalcanal, was killed
Johnny
that first day.
Badalone on Iwo Jima, he was killed.
Did you want to return to combat as well?
I did. I went back to combat.
Oh, Korea, obviously.
Korea, yeah. Yeah, I did go back. But that was 5 years later, Yeah, I went back voluntarily. I didn't have to. But they called it retreading. You could, go back. And I served with the 1st Marine Division in Korea.
All 3 years.
Well, 3 years in World War II. I was in the 5th Marine Division. In Korea, I served a year with the 1st Marine Division. And
As a corporal, I believe you said.
yes, corporal in Korea. I was just a private in World War World War II. Yeah, but yes, I had no qualms about going back in combat. Yeah, but I didn't realize how cold it got in Korea. I like to froze to death.
It was pretty warm in.
I was nothing but a Florida cracker. Whoa, it was cold. But I had on a parka and a K-Pot vest and wool trousers and gloves, and a trigger finger and a hood and a scarf, everything.
Was Korea as intense of a situation? Well, nothing's going to be more intense than Iwo Jima, but were there intense moments there as well?
Nothing compared to Iwo Jima, no. We had our moments, but it was minor compared to what the fire that we were under on Iwo. It was something that, what I remember is the cold, how cold it was. So
That was the real enemy at the time.
Gosh. But we did, and I didn't see where there was a transition taking place. MacArthur was being canned, and General Ridgway was coming in to take over General MacArthur because Truman kicked MacArthur out. Well, there was a lot of transition taking place, but then General Ridgway started what we call Operation Killer, and First Marine Division, First Cav, Second Armored, something went up the middle. Well, I didn't last long. I did a lot of patrol duty, trying to break up roadblocks, but not big action stuff like they ran across I landed after they got out of the Chosin Reservoir, and so I didn't run into much. And I had they had a system where we had a lot of points. Purple Heart, World War II service, dependents, and forget what else.
What are your medals, if you don't mind me asking?
Oh,
Obviously, Purple Heart.
Purple Heart, Combat Action Ribbon, Presidential Unit Citation, Victory Medal. I'll show you. You want to see one? Or?
Yeah, eventually, yeah.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Sure.
So going back to the, obviously we've talked for a long time, but trying to go back to the, so you don't remember, so going back to Christmas. So you were in training in San Diego. What was it called again, the base out there?
Camp Pendleton.
Camp Pendleton. So Christmas 1944, you would have been at Camp Pendleton.
Probably, yeah.
So nothing that, maybe try your best to try to think back Thanksgiving, Christmas, New Year's 1944. I know you were talking, maybe relay earlier what you were talking about them trying, bringing turkey,
Yes.
trying to create that atmosphere.
Yes, they did try, and they did bring you slices of turkey and mashed potatoes, beans, or whatever. But it wasn't really a big celebration of any kind, really. I don't recollect that at all. Just a day that we did enjoy a nice meal, and certainly were cognizant of it being a Christmas occasion, you know. But it wasn't a big special day, you know, where I remember, oh yeah, this.
What about 1945 Christmas, the first Christmas after? What about that one? Does that ring a bell?
Yeah.
Were you married before World War II?
Oh no.
After?
No, after. Yeah. After
Korea?
After Korea.
Okay.
But no, I believe I was at Camuela Parker Ranch on the Big Island of Hawaii.
So you were still obviously in the Marines.
Oh yeah. And I just don't remember anything special even then, Mike, about Christmas, except I'm sure there were some isolated guys singing Christmas carols or something like that. Drinking took place. But I just can't recollect it being a big celebration.
So there's no decorations that stick out or special meals or...
Well, meal, yeah, turkey.
You remember the meal, okay,
Yeah,
1945,
turkey, yeah.
okay.
But as far as, I just can't remember other than there just wasn't much in terms of commemorating the birth of Jesus Christ, our Savior, at that time. There just didn't seem to be much. Now, there were the chaplain would hold services, but I don't even remember that being special on Christmas. There could have been.
What about after your military service and now, you know, with your family, and what do you have holiday traditions that have, you know, surviving Iwo Jima and you're allowed to have a family and things? What about today? What has been your Christmas traditions post military with a family?
Well, we get together as a family. In fact, we just talked about Thanksgiving yesterday, I believe it was. We try to get together as a family, have a special dinner, turkey, you know, and all that, either here or at my daughter's. In fact, Christmas we're going down to Orlando, Ocoee, just outside of Orlando. We exchange gifts on Christmas to make it a special occasion.
Every year?
Yes, every year. In fact, Carol has big ostrich-like eggshells that are highly decorated, and we always have, she gives each child one every year for Christmas decoration. So we try to keep alive the tradition through church. We have Maundy, Thursday church. We have Christmas Eve service at our church.
Which church?
Faith Presbyterian Church.
Here in town.
39th Avenue. And we have a special program, candle ceremony, and silent night, holy night, you know.
And you've done all these traditions probably for decades.
Oh yes, for quite a while, yes. I've been active in the church most of my life, and been an officer ordained as an elder, and still serve. I hand out programs still on Sundays.
Are most people in church during these special services, are they aware of your background, do you think?
Some. No, not all. No. I'm really, at my age, I kind of
take a more humble approach to everything.
Very humble approach.
Well, I
the
appreciate
veterans are very aware of my status. In fact, I've got a meeting tomorrow at 1 o'clock.